we can get started. Welcome, everyone. I see some people joining still, but we're gonna get going. My name is Benjamin Bischoff. I'm a test automation engineer at Trivago in Düsseldorf, Germany, and I'm very happy to have the opportunity to host this webinar, this Karate Labs webinar. First of all, thanks, of course, to Karate Labs for doing this, for organizing this. And now I'm thrilled to introduce Alberto Ceballos to you, who joins us from Valencia, Spain. And with 25 years in IT, including 2 decades at GFT IT Consulting, Alberto has worked with major banks worldwide, specializes in test automation. And when he's not transforming banking technology, he's either keeping active with sports or busy being a dad to 3 kids.
Yeah,
So
the second is probably the more accurate.
so please welcome Alberto, everyone.
So thank you, Benjamin, and thank you all. Yeah, I was by the way, I was having a look at your video as well, Benjamin. I know that you're doing a lot of things apart from test automation. I can see that you also wrote a test book related to karate. So it's probably the first one. So I didn't know how you could do all these things and also act as a conference, a reader, speaker in many events. So I realized that you were magicians, and now I understand that you're doing magic by your own. So nice to talk to you again, and yeah, very happy to be here to share with you our experience with karate in a banking specific use case. So I can share my screen if you want, and we can start, or you want to maybe go through any other kind of topic?
I think it is fine for you to start, and I'm sure some questions will come up in the meantime, or something we can maybe dive deeper. So
perfect. So I will share my screen, and please, if anything is not clear, just let me know. Don't hesitate to interrupt. Okay. Okay. Let me know if you can see my screen, please.
all good. We see it.
Okay. And I know that this type of topics could be very people can get very passionate. So one of the first things that I want to say is that don't believe in anything that I say. So this is my own experience. Anything that you could be disagreeing or agreeing not 100%, that is okay as well. So any question, please just raise the hand or put that in the chat, and we will go through them at the end. Just a very short intro about my company. So I work for GFT, as Benjamin said, for more than 25 years, 25 years in total. GFT is an IT consultant headquartered in Germany, but is worldwide. So we are in more than 20 countries. We are specialized in banking, but because of the history that we have, but obviously we are going through all the different sectors. Today, we're going to talk about the banking specific, but as you will see, that is not just a link or focus to the banking sector. It could be applicable to any. These are the main messages that I want to share with you today. Basically 3. I don't want to go to more details because maybe we get lost. So the first one, and you will see why, the importance of the test strategy, that is common. That has nothing to do with karate. It's just the baseline to establish good pillars for test automation in general. Then the second and the third are more related to karate. So how we did to extend karate out of the box capabilities to get what we call the shift left, a real shift left approach in test automation. And the last one is another extension that we were able to provide to a client, which is how to generate the functional reports on top of what karate is very good at, which is showing execution reports. Right. So let's go. And again, Benjamin, anything that you see, please let me know. To understand a little bit of the context, so we are in the banking sector. This is a Tier 1 bank, one of the biggest in the world. They were involved in a multi-year program to change or replace the core banking system. The mainframe was what they have still, and they're replacing it by a cloud-based solution. Not only the core banking at the end is responsible for the accounts, the transactions, the balances, the main topics, but the rest of the services are implemented using microservices. In this case, Java, Spring Boot, most of them. Some of them are also batches, some of them are all different type of services. The majority of them are Java, Spring Boot based. The complexity of this environment is that there's no just one or two microservices. We're talking about more than 60 or 50, 60 microservices, so meaning 50 of 60 different teams that are responsible of a specific functionality around the core banking system. And all of them should be tested isolated, in an isolated way. Even before, that was the idea, right? Even before moving to an integrated environment, because as you can imagine, with one or two microservices, that could be easy. But with 50 or 60 or even more, to keep up and running an integrated environment is very complex and very it costs a lot of effort, not only money, but also effort for the people. So we basically agree with them that they needed to be able to test as soon as possible the functionality, not just covering the unit test of what they're building, but also the functionality completely in an isolated mode. And as I said, this is the use case that we are presenting today, but it's applicable to any domain. So it doesn't matter if it's banking, if insurance. So at the end of the day, it's a bunch of microservices interacting among them, REST in some cases, or asynchronously using, in this case, Kafka, with different technologies like or formats like Avro and Proto at the same time.
Sorry to interrupt. I just have a question. Were you involved in this from the very start of this, or did you come in later?
Yes. We were involved from the beginning, and in fact, that is one of the reasons why my first message is to pay attention in this type of complex environments to the test strategy, which is critical. I mean, if you are not able to find, because again, I'm telling this from an IT consultant point of view. So I'm not the client, and I'm not even the product seller. I'm not Karate Labs. So I do want the client to do the best thing possible based on our experience. So one of the key parts is to identify the stakeholders on the client side that is able to guide the rest of the teams related to the test automation that they're going to be implementing. So that is why the test strategy is critical. I was involved from the beginning, like 3 years ago, when the stakeholders were not even known by the client itself. So there was no stakeholders. So, and that is why I'm saying that is critical. It took a lot of time. I know that this is because of the complexity of the environment. It could be easier when it's smaller, obviously, right? So moving to the objectives that they have. So imagine that one of those services, we will be calling it the service and the test, is our goal. So I'm part of the team that is responsible of this particular service, whatever it is, account management, for example. So they wanted to ensure that the service behaves as expected, but not only for this, but for the rest as well. So each team is responsible for its own service. They wanted to reduce the issues when they move it to an integrated environment. There was a limitation at that time that they couldn't use, for example, Docker to simulate complex environments in their local because of the virtual environments. So the only way to test the functionality cross-service was in an integrated environment. So that was really too late, because when we moved to that environment and the issues appear, and of course the issues appear, the cost to revert them back and fix them was high, as everybody knows. So their objective was to ensure that the services behave as expected, reduce the number of issues, and obviously reduce the amount of time that takes the new functionality to go to production. The challenges, and that is the key message, the first one is test strategy. It's a must. Limitations on the local environments, it could happen, and it happened in this case, so that they were not able to run, for example, internal components locally. The functional tests were done mainly in integrated environments. Most of them only focus on REST interfaces when Kafka was a critical part and it was not really tested. There was no, at that point, now this has changed, thankfully, this has been changed. There was no schema registry. So the communication between the different teams was a key part of the strategy, and it did not happen properly. So at the end of the day, changes in the schemas or the contracts of the REST, the open API specifications were not properly communicated to the rest of the teams. So there was a lack of consistency also in the reporting of the status of each and every service. So the first thing that we need to do as an external IT provider was to make sure that they are doing the things right, or the right things. And the first thing is to define the test strategy. Again, this is not karate specific, but define the strategy, document it properly, communicate to all the people involved, and then make sure that there is a stakeholder that is able to align them is critical. Once this is done, and as part of the test strategy, you will reach to the point to choose the tools. One of the stages, we're not going to go through the test strategy because it's another topic, but one of the stages will be which tools should I use in which stage. In this case, what we decided is to use Karate mostly for the component test. And again, the definition of the component test, we took like, and I'm not joking, like months to align all the people, just to understand or to aligning the concept of what is a component test for you. So is the component test just the service? Is the component test just including the service plus the database and the Kafka topics that you're responsible for? All these type of things needs to be documented. But for us, basically just in a phrase, a component test is the phase or the stage to test your functionality, the functionality of your service, isolated completely from external dependencies. So if you need any other service, you need to mock it. If you need an internal component, call it internal, like a database, you need to bring it up in your own local environment. So you can test it, the functionality completely without any mocking of your service. The service is as it is. You can mock external dependencies, but you cannot mock your service. So this is the agreement that we reached with them. And again, I'm probably sure that people will disagree, but this is what we did. Okay, so what we did at the end with Karate, and the reason why we chose Karate is obviously, you know, the people from that are listening to this webinar will probably know the beauties of Karate, but apart from being open source, one of the key, I think I can flash it. Okay, one of the key topic is the Java interoperability. So meaning that you can extend it with any new functionality that is required. And this is what we did. We basically create a library that is extending Karate capabilities to do other stuff. For example, and I'm going to go here, for example, to be able to test databases, to be able to test JMS, even AWS services like S3 and SQS. That sounds strange, but we did it using embedded versions of these services. Using Redis, for example, just to simulate the caching systems, and also Kafka. And here I have to stop a little bit because when we built it, yeah, we didn't know that Karate was offering that as well. So for people who listen to this, please first check out what Karate offers. Do not do what we did, which is build from scratch something that it was already there. But at the end of the day, we were ending in the same type of approach regarding Karate. So being able to produce events, consume events, both types, Avro and Proto, and also be validating or do assertions against the whatever you received or the event, the content of the events that you receive. An example, we're not going to go through demos today, but an example of how we basically extend it. We are not using the keywords, we're using the kind of functions that are used in Java code. For example, the database connections. This is a typical, and you will see examples in internet and in the web, in the previous webinars and the documentation from Karate as well. Another important topic, the who. I mean, how to approach this type of project. How many roles are required apart from the test strategy, the stakeholder that will help you push this forward within the client. We need basically 3 different roles. I'm not talking about persons, maybe it could be 1 or 100, but we're talking about roles. So the owners of the applications that will help you define the scenarios that need to be tested. The scenarios will cover obviously the functionality of the services. Then you do have some people in charge of the, what we call the framework, is Karate plus the library, which at the end will evolve it if necessary. And then obviously we do have the implementers, the SDETs, so basically the QA engineers, SDET, however you want to call them, but basically the ones in charge of implementing the different scenarios with Karate. Also,
Sorry, was it hard to get the team all on board of using Karate, or were there some that said, I don't want to do that?
Yeah. I mean, and it's a very good question, Benjamin. So there are two, I would say there are 2 different situations. It could happen that you start from scratch from the beginning of the project when there's no functionality built yet. Then I would say that is easier if you start from scratch with a team, either isolated team, QA, or within its own development teams. These are, I mean, part of the strategy that should be stating that clearly. But when you start from scratch is one option, easier probably. In our case, part of the functionality of the services was already built. There was no test automation. So we need to catch up first. And that to do that with the people building the functionality that was already a part of the functionality built, that was difficult. So we decided to start from an isolated, separated team at the beginning, just to do this catch up. So the effort done at the beginning was basically to cover the existing functionality, automate it. And once that was done, the agreement was, we will move the test automation skills or the roles to the team. But first, isolate the team for each of the different services, catching up in terms of functionality.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. And the way, as I explained at the beginning, so one of the key topics that we wanted to cover is the component test, because that was the pain at that point. So when you move it to integrated environment, a lot of issues appear. And why? Because they could not test everything functional from a functional point of view locally or in a pipeline, right? So what we did is use Karate's capabilities with the extension that we created to build this component test and be able to test everything in local without any external dependencies. So any developer, when they were creating their own branch for the new functionality and they were basically completing the development, they could run the full set of automated tests against the service without requiring any external dependency. That was critical. That was a game changer, I would say. And that is what was, let's say, the critical step to get to that shift left concept. So you can test your service locally as it is. The service is brought up as it is. And the only change is that whenever you require external services, you mock them or you embed them into the, in this case is Java, so the context of that you are executing locally or even in the pipeline. So what we did, all the embedded services, like as a Kafka database, Redis, whatever the service requires, you can bring them up locally using embedded libraries. That is a research step to find those libraries, of course, in the market. If not, you can build by your own, but at the end, you are replacing the real service by an embedded version of the service. Same for the mocks. So whenever you require an external service, imagine that is like this, right? The account management that requires a service that randomly creates account numbers. This is going to be another service. I'm not responsible of it. My goal is to test this. So this will be mock using in this case, Karate. We did some additional extension there, but basically Karate mocking is great. Then what we did is just bring up the service as it is. So the only change here is that whenever in the configuration you point to AWS or databases or Kafka, whatever, you are pointed to localhost, and localhost. The good thing is that when we do that, you are able not only to test the REST interactions, but also to test the database entries, to test and consume messages that were probably produced by the service when you start a flow. And also, if necessary, to modify the mock, which is the external service behavior, so that the interactions between the service and the mock could be controlled as well from the test. That is what we did. We could also, and we did in some of the services, reuse some of the features created as performance tests. Again, that is a functionality that comes out of the box with Karate. And if you haven't tested, just please have a look, because it's great to reuse existing code. And that is not only valid, so this approach is not only valid for the component testing local. So imagine that you just use the library against an integrated environment and all up and running services. You can use it as well, just ignoring the setup of the embedded and the mocks. You just use the real ones. But in terms of testing, those will remain, because the library will allow you to test not only the rest, but also the rest of the services or internal components that are part of your service. Okay. Going a little bit deeper. And any question, Benjamin, or any?
Oh yeah, I'm looking at this in awe, because I see you pretty much used everything that Karate offers. And did you
Except Kafka, because we didn't realize that it was there, but we built it instead of reusing. Wrong. So you should read the documentation first.
But did you first do the research what Karate can offer and then
Yes.
decide how to use it, or did you also hit some things that you only saw later that Karate has a solution for that already?
In this case, it was only Kafka, because the rest, even in the documentation, Karate states clearly that if you want, for example, test a connectivity or connection to database, then you can use it by using the Java interoperability, and that is what we did. So we were following the documentation from Karate as well, which, by the way, and I'm not part of Karate Labs, but I have to be honest, is super clear and is very helpful for any developer. So the Kafka was the only piece that we realized after we built it, that it was there. It's true that it's there with the license. So it's not there in an open source, but it's there. So if you do have the, I don't remember if it's the Plus or the Enterprise, or the Plus, I think is the minimum. I think you can use the Kafka functionality as well. But if not, you're open, you can build it. Okay, that's the beauty. That's the beauty.
Yeah, you mentioned open source also before as one of the features or traits of Karate. How important was open source for the client?
Well, yeah, this is always a fight. Whenever you go as an external to the client, so in this case, IT consultant, GFT, it's very difficult sometimes to sell licenses, because at the end you become a reseller, and even for us, it's not usually what we want to do. So the first approach that we do is always use open source solutions. If the client obviously has their own licenses, we will use them. But being a reseller is not something that we used to do for the clients. Open source is basically the first attempt. If not, then we will try to find a licensed version or a licensed product.
Perfect.
And now the third topic that I wanted to mention is the report. So once we do have this available, so each and every service could test the functionality, their own functionality, completely isolated and locally, and even in a pipeline, let's call it Jenkins or whatever you use. Then there was another open point or another pane for the client, which was the reports. So when you have 1 or 2 services, no issues, you can manage it. When you have 50, 60, 100 different services, and each of them are reporting the execution of their test, you need to be very consistent and have this functional view, which from our point of view was not available using the typical execution results, even in Karate. So Karate is very, very good at showing execution results, but when we are talking about business functionality, then you need something else. You need another point of view. So, and also, as we say here, it could be partial. So if you see this, like 7, everything okay, no issues or no failures, well, you could be happy, but are you really sure that you're covering everything? Maybe you're doing a tag-based execution and you're just covering a bunch of the APIs and not all. Right? Obviously, you need to have that different view, extra view. And what we did is using this extension again, this library, what we created is something like this, which is basically for each and every service, there must be someone that explains from a scenario point of view what is the functionality that needs to be covered. Complete functionality. Obviously, this will evolve in time, but the number of scenarios that represents the whole functionality of the service. We, the library, using Karate hooks, can tell you how many of those are actually automated. By using the execution hook, we can also tell you the percentage of pass, fail, or skip. And this is another key indicator that was not present. And to be honest, I haven't seen it in many or in any, I would say, test automation frameworks. But basically, it's telling you, yeah, you could be 100 or 120, 120 scenario passed. But what if you are covering only 10% of the API? So are you happy with that? I would say no, but without that indicator, you don't know. You just see everything in green. You don't know what exactly are you covering. The look and feel, obviously, this is like kind of a skeleton, so you can use your own look and feel in the report. During the execution, we're basically injecting the results, so the data, in this case, outer ring automation, inner ring execution. You can group them by functionality, and that is important. The functionality, where it comes from. So obviously, that needs to be someone telling what is these scenarios logically group in a functionality under a common functionality, right? So the BAs, and again, going back to the roles, the BAs should provide a list. I don't care, or we don't care if it's a JSON, as simple as a JSON, or is a story in a central place, or is doing a call to a REST that will retrieve that list. But at the end of the day, you need to group those scenarios and identify which are those scenarios. And using the Karate runtime hook, this is something that is not, I would say, 100% well documented, but it's true that it's very important because you can use the runtime hooks to, for example, using the dry run to get the list of scenarios that are actually coded. To do that, obviously, you need to identify the scenarios uniquely by unique tags. This is something that we had to do some tweaks because when we're talking about scenario lines, the uniqueness of the tags are not that easy. So we need to do some tweaks there to be able to, even for our scenario lines, to be able to have unique tags for each of them. But at the end of the day, is the way to trace back to the requirements. And obviously, once you execute it, you can get the result. And this is the API. The API, how we did it. The API coverage basically is telling you from the scenarios to the service, which of the exposed endpoints are you really hitting as part of the execution of those hundreds, thousands, or millions of different scenarios. There is a runtime hook, which is an after step that will help you identify the lines that contain, for example, the method. The method at the end represents a call, could be a get, could be a post, could be a put, whatever, but it represents an interaction. So if you capture that and you store and obviously you then process it, you will be able to tell these set of scenarios did hit this set of endpoints. So you could tell the percentage of endpoints hit by your test. At least it's another KPI. Is 100% accurate? Probably not, because you can hit one scenario once, but maybe there are hundreds of different combinations for the same from the same API call. But obviously, at least it's an indicator, right? And the same. Yep.
Was this API coverage a requirement from the start that you have it, or was that something that came
That
up?
was something that we proposed, we implemented, and when they saw it, they say, well, we love it. Because at the end of the day, apart from Kafka interactions, most of the end services expose APIs. And if we don't know if they are tested, then we are not happy. So that was not at the beginning. We realized that it was required. It was a critical indicator that was missing, and we just built it. Same for the mock side of it. So whenever you are testing a service, so this is your goal, your scope, but you need an external service. We said that we were mocking them. There was a question here saying, are we doing it right? So are we mocking the service, the external service, right? Or maybe we're doing it wrong. If we're doing it wrong, obviously the interaction results will be wrong. So what we need to do is to make sure that any interactions between the service, and it's not the test, it's just the service and the mocks, both requests and responses are aligned to the specification of the real service that we are mocking, so the external service. So that was not available by when we started the project. We created a feature request. We talked to Peter, and he was accepting this, let's say, contribution. We did create this mock interceptor, which basically is exactly this interaction. So whenever there is a call to a mock, I am able to intercept it. If I am able to intercept it, I can validate it. If I do, obviously, have the open API specification, which we did in the for this project. So that was the way for us to say that the mocks were correct. So we are happy with the mocks. If we are interacting with this mock, at least we are happy with the functionality that is going through the mock, which is representing the external service. So we are more safe, basically. Okay. Okay, so what the report will look like, apart from the summary, then obviously you need details below. And I think I've got, let me try to open it. I think I executed the demo project a few minutes ago. So this is kind of the summary. As I said, it's kind of a skeleton. You can do whatever you want with the look and feel. At the end, the data is what is important. But below, you will see each and every different scenario. In this case, we were talking about Jiras, Epics, and so on. It could be different for the different project, could be Confluence links, whatever. But at the end, you are listing the execution, all these 68 scenarios, 90% automated, 70% pass. You will be able to see them in a table. And if you want to go even deeper, then yes, we will go to the karate report so we can see each and every step what the scenario is doing. Okay. So this is what we want to say here. Basically, it's a traceability back to the requirement. So they could be linked to the documentation of the specific scenario. But the scenarios are grouped. So you can see here, they are grouped by the concept of feature. This is what is not available if you don't use this extra layer in terms of reporting. So the view, the business view, let's say the functional view. Okay, and then as I said, you go deeper into the details and you will see all and each and every step that the scenario was basically going through. This is more or less about it. Benjamin, I do have here some codes, but I'm not sure if it makes sense. The look and feel, for example, of an insert, maybe it does, because I guess people here is quite technical, right? So this is an example of a database assertion, for example. Imagine that the service is up and running, the mocks are up and running, then you force a workflow to be executed, and you want to validate the results in a database. So basically here, what we're doing is using this keyword. Well, it's not a keyword, it's like a function. Then you can, for example, run queries, replacing the values with whatever the scenario requires. The values or the templates could be, if you are, let's say, well organized, it will be in a JSON file, maybe. You do have per functionality or per workflow or per flow. You could create a set of files that represent the queries, and then you can inject the values and then execute, and then create assertions against the results of the execution. In this case, the queries. After doing an insert, we're doing a query, we're checking the result. As simple as that. Obviously, this is implemented in the library and the methods in Java. Okay, similar to the S3. So same approach. We will have a kind of, it's not a keyword, as I said, it's kind of a function, but it sounds like a keyword, where you can use them once they are initialized. You can use them, for example, to do an assertion against an S3 object store by the service. Imagine that the service, part of the workflow, is storing something in an S3. Because we were embedding an S3 version, they will be using that, a local host, blah, blah, whatever, instead of the real one. The service will put whatever file is in the S3, and the assertion will basically validate that the service did what it was expected, which is putting a file in an S3. Okay. For the Kafka, yeah, I didn't want to go through it before, because, as I said, Karate offers this out of the box with the license, but at the end of the day, it's more or less the same. So you do have producers. You could even use like plain text JSON objects, plain text Abro schemas, and then create events from there. Or you can use the Abro schemas if they were, for example, already compiled in Java classes. And then you can do some assertions, reading the objects. You can do some timeouts. You can do some filtering. So you can wait up until X number of seconds till the message appears, or timeouts, and then you can validate whatever you want from the message. Again, this is what we did. Karate offers its own, more or less the same. They talk about sessions, creating sessions, then collecting the results from the session, but then validating, which is great. Again, have a look if you didn't have a look before, and then you can decide, use the out-of-the-box functionality with the license, or build your own using the Java interoperability. Okay. And this is more or less what I wanted to cover. I think I'm still on time. I was worried.
Yes.
But basically, it's recapping, a little bit of recap. So be able to do the component test locally, be able to use the library even in integrated environments, because there's nothing preventing you to use it in a real up and running environment. Be careful with the reports. Just if you need extra reports, not just execution, then you can build them on top of Karate. Fantastic. And going back to the first message, the test strategy is critical. You cannot do this, even you cannot force the teams. Imagine 50 teams means more than 200 people. You cannot force them to use a tool, even from outside, like me, if you don't have the right stakeholders and people within the bank that will help you doing it. So the test strategy is critical, first step, and then you can build on top of it. I hope that it was clear. Benjamin.
Yes, wonderful. That is very, very interesting. And I haven't seen personally a project of that scale done, I think, with any test framework before. So that is very impressive that this is a multi-year project that came together. So seamlessly in the end. I was interested in this multi-year plan. Was that something that was
Yeah,
completely set up like a waterfall, or was that an
no, well,
agile?
no, what I mean by multi-year is the program within the bank. So the program to replace the mainframe with
Mhm.
this cloud-based solution, they started and they did it right. In my opinion, they did it right because instead of migrating existing products, what they did is build something from scratch, a new, complete new product in the new, complete new platform using the core banking system, which is a cloud-based solution. They tested, they put it in production. It was in production like last year, millions of accounts, and it was a lending product created. So they are using it actively. They prove that it worked. The platform, it did work. So now they are expanding it to more products and doing it even more configurable. So the multi-year program means, I mean, the replacement of the mainframe by this cloud solution. So test
Oh,
engineering or testing is obviously going in parallel with them.
so how long did the testing program that we the testing project take?
So it stays. So it's like 3 years, at least 3 years now. Yeah, it was February 2022 when we started. As I said, catching up first, moving to the integrating the test automation within the teams. They were doing by their own, and they were evolving the library, so the framework, complete framework, Karate plus the library, using this what we call it the Center of Excellence or the framework team, so that any new requirement was going to this team. They were evolving the framework, and the people now included in the development teams were using them actively. So 3 years from now, and it will go more and more in the future. So it will continue.
Did you also test the old mainframe solution
No,
before starting with the new one? No.
no. We started from the new platform. No.
I was also wondering what other testing solutions you evaluated before settling on karate, or did you have that in mind already?
Well, not only us, but also within the teams. There was a lot of again, this is very passionate where people get very passionate with the with the tools. I really don't, but again, the cucumber was the other option, obviously, because of the nature. So think of it, most of the services were Java based, so they wanted something that could be evolved. In this case, step definitions using Java was another option. In this case, there's no UI because it's all of the services were backend services. So forget about UI from the picture. I know the Karate can do it, and we are doing it very with very good results in other clients, but not in this case. So the alternative to Karate was Cucumber.
Just a reminder, if there are any questions from the audience, just let us know. We're here to help. So let me see. Yeah, you explained a lot of technical stuff, but also a lot of the setup of the teams, which is very interesting. And I was also wondering about the report you showed, the functional
Mm.
report and the coverage of the features. Are you
Mm-hmm.
maybe planning on open sourcing this?
We usually don't, but just because we are not a company that usually is doing that right now. But again, this is, in fact, I created a kind of, not wrong, I created a Medium entry, just explaining a little bit about this specific report. I fully understand that this is not part, should not be part of Karate. Karate is execution, and it's great doing that. Whatever you want to do it on top of it, do it. We never thought about open sourcing this, honestly.
Because that
But yeah, it could be. I mean,
looks very interesting also to us.
at the end, the ideas are. I mean, you can implement them as you want, but basically, this is explaining how you could get it. Obviously, you need a baseline of the scenarios. You need the karate helping you with the execution and the coding. But again, be careful with the tags. So each and every scenario should be unique, and that means that you need to identify them uniquely. And maybe we can discuss with Kapil and Peter in the future. But the scenario lines right now, I think there's a limitation. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something new that I didn't check, but uh, we didn't see that option. Right? We need to build something to get rid of this limitation, which is the scenario align unique tags.
How straightforward did you find the process of contributing to karate, like doing a pull request? Was that easy?
It was nice. It was nice, and I know that Peter is another passionate person. That when we are approaching or reaching or putting in front of him some new features, but in this case was fantastic. Was quite good. He was only requesting more tests around the new functionality, and once that was done, it was sorry, it was included without an issue.
Very nice. So yeah, personally, I would think a project like this would be very, very daunting at first. How was your first day or week in that project? Did you feel any fear that this was too big, maybe for karate or you?
Mm, Again, we probably the more challenging or the most challenging step was the at the beginning to help them define the strategy. That was the most challenging. Once that was done, we could see clearly that karate could help. Um, I mean, right out of the box with the existing functionality, it was also great. But even if you increase it or extend it, even better. But the issues were at the beginning, just, and I'm not joking, like weeks fighting just for the concepts. So just to clearly list what is a component test. That as simple as that. It took like yeah, it was hard. It was hard to convince, not to convince. At the end is to reach an agreement. I'm not convincing anyone. I mean, and I'm not right on 100% of the time. So it's just to get an agreement. But
Speaking,
that was key. That was critical.
yeah. And speaking of convincing, I'm wondering, how do you establish credibility when coming in to such a project? How do you make the team listen to you?
To me, the easiest way is through a POC. That is as simple as that. I love looking at the code, and most of the people that we deal with, I mean, when talking about development, our development teams, they love looking at the code instead of just listening to people. You can say everything. You can look at hundreds of different confirm pages. Show me the code. If I can see the code, I can see it running, and it makes sense and adds value, which was the case when they saw the first time the report. Yeah, they was a little bit confused. So how can you get this? I've never seen this API coverage. How can you get it? Or well, these type of things are to me the more important things are to show them in front of them the results in a very limited, obviously in a very limited scenario and in a very limited context.
Very nice. I think with this tip to to convince developers and development teams through code to listen
Yeah.
to you, that is a very valuable thing. And I think if there are not any more questions, we can probably wrap this up at this point. So thanks a lot, Alberto. It was very, very interesting. I hope our viewers feel the same, but I'm sure they will. And thanks again for doing this. And thanks, Karate Labs, for hosting this. And catch you next time.
My pleasure. And thank you, Kapil. Thank you, Benjamin. And thank you all the people listening. If there's nothing else, have a very good weekend.
Yes, have a good weekend and see you.
Thank you.